All right, so are you ready to like seriously amp up those English skills and have some fun while we're at it?
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. Okay, well, in today's deep dive, we're ditching those like boring textbooks and tapping into all the fun stuff for learning English.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about strategies that feel a lot less like, hitting the books and a lot more like just living your life.
Right, exactly, and living your life in English.
That's the goal.
That's it. So the article that we're going to be exploring today is titled Boost Your English Learning with These Unique and Engaging Tricks. And I got to say, it really does deliver. It does.
Yeah.
It lays out 10 strategies that are so effective, but also so entertaining. And that first one really grabbed my attention. It's called Become a Pop Culture Detective.
I love that one. What I find so fascinating about that approach is that it just, recognizes this like fundamental truth about how our brains work, right? We learn best when we're having fun.
When we're engaged, when we're entertained. And think about it. You probably like pick up new words and phrases all the time just from watching movies or listening to music.
Oh, totally. I've learned some very colorful slang from binge watching certain shows.
Yeah.
But this strategy takes it like a step further.
Mm-hmm.
The article talks about watching Netflix with dual subtitles, so English and your native language side by side.
Exactly. And the reason that this works so well is that it just leverages the power of context, right? So you're not just memorizing isolated words, you're actually
Right.
seeing and hearing them in action. So you understand how they're used in real life situations. Plus, you've got the visual reinforcement of the subtitles, and that really helps cement those words in your memory.
Yeah, I could see how that would be way more effective than just flipping through flashcards.
Yeah.
But is it really enough to just passively watch? I mean, wouldn't I need to actively study those words and phrases as well? Well, passive exposure is definitely a great starting point.
Oh.
But the article also encourages you to be more proactive, right?
Yeah.
So pause the show, rewind, jot down any words or phrases that kind of intrigue you, maybe even look them up in an online dictionary to really understand their nuances.
Oh, I like that idea. So it's like turning your favorite show into a interactive language lesson.
Exactly.
I love that. And speaking of entertainment, the article also suggests analyzing song lyrics. I mean, who hasn't belted out their favorite tunes and wondered, wait, what does that actually mean?
Right. It's such a brilliant way to learn idioms, slang, and even grammatical structures without feeling like you're hitting the books.
Yeah.
Plus music has this amazing ability to tap into our emotions, and research has actually shown that information tied to an emotional response is more likely to stick in our long-term memory.
So you're saying I should blame my Adele obsession for my impeccable use of the past tense?
Probably.
I knew it. All right. Moving on to another gem from the article. This one is pure genius. Create a meme bank.
Oh, yes, the power of humor.
Yes.
Essentially, you're taking newly learned vocabulary and creating these like relatable, funny memes. It's a way to personalize the learning experience and make it much more engaging.
Okay, I can totally see this working. Like, imagine a picture of a confused cat with the caption, "Me trying to understand English prepositions."
Yeah.
Instantly relatable and hilarious. But seriously, why does this work? Is it just about the giggles?
Well, it's more than just laughs, although those definitely help. It's about combining visual learning with emotional engagement.
Yeah, okay.
So by embedding new vocabulary into this humorous scenario,
Yeah.
you're creating this like vivid memory that's more likely to stick.
Interesting. So what do you think, listener? Have you ever tried learning a language through pop culture? What was your experience? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, let's move on to the next strategy, which I have to admit sounds a bit theatrical. It's called Adopt an English Alter Ego.
I love this one. It's about tapping into your creative side and unleashing your inner performer. So the article suggests creating a whole new persona who only speaks English. Wait, so I'm supposed to invent a whole new character? Isn't that a bit much?
Think of it as role-playing, but for language learning. You give your alter ego a name, a backstory, even a specific accent.
Yeah.
It's a way to kind of step outside your comfort zone and experiment with the language in a safe space.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal. So instead of being, well, me with all my usual insecurities about speaking English, I could be like Max, the fearless entrepreneur from New York
There you go.
with a snappy American accent.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that by adopting this new identity, you create this like psychological distance between yourself and your fears about speaking. It's like putting on this mask that gives you permission to be more confident and expressive.
Yeah, I've definitely heard actors say that embodying a character can be like incredibly liberating, but how do I actually practice with my English alter ego?
Well, the article recommends practicing daily scenarios in front of
Yeah.
a mirror. So, order a coffee, give a presentation, have an imaginary conversation with a friend.
Right.
All in English, of course.
So it's like improv for language learning.
Right.
I like it. And, I bet this would be especially helpful for people who are like shy about speaking English in public. It's like a low pressure way to kind of build confidence and fluency.
Absolutely. And it can also be a lot of fun. So, listener, what would your English alter ego be like? Let us know in the comments. We're dying to hear your creative ideas.
All right, next up is a strategy that speaks to my competitive side. It's all about gamifying your progress. I mean, who doesn't love a good challenge?
Right. Our brains are wired to respond to rewards and achievements.
Right.
So why not harness that power to boost our language learning?
Exactly. The article highlights some popular language learning apps like Duolingo and Quizlet, which are great for building daily streaks, earning points, and even competing with friends.
Yeah.
I've definitely gotten sucked into those leaderboards a few times myself.
But you can also create your own level-up system. You know what motivates you? Maybe you unlock a delicious treat after mastering 10 new verbs. Or you reward yourself with a movie night after conquering a tricky grammar concept.
Ooh, I love that idea. And it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. Even small rewards can help keep you motivated and on track. It's like tricking your brain into enjoying the learning process.
Exactly. So listener, have you ever used gamification technique to boost your learning? What rewards work best for you? Let us know in the comments. All right, let's move on to strategy number 4, which is especially relevant in our tech-savvy World Voice Assistant showdown.
Wait, you're telling me I can improve my English by talking to my phones? I gotta hear.
It might sound a bit unconventional, but it's actually a fantastic way to practice speaking and listening without any fear of judgment. Plus, you get instant feedback on your pronunciation and grammar.
That's right. I mean, those voice assistants are getting smarter by the day.
They are.
They can understand complex questions, hold conversations, and even tell jokes, albeit sometimes cheesy ones.
Right.
So what do we do?
Well, the article suggests asking questions, setting reminders, or even like debating various topics with your voice assistant.
Okay.
All in English, of course.
Okay, that's a fun challenge. I can just imagine myself arguing with Siri about the best way to make a cup of tea.
There you go.
It's like a low-stakes way to practice those everyday conversations.
Exactly. And for an extra challenge, try tongue twisters. Can you see she sells seashells by the seashore? Clearly enough for your AI companion to understand. It's a great way to test your pronunciation and fluency.
I'm going to have to try that one out later. I bet Siri will have a good laugh at my expense. So, listener, how often do you use voice assistants in English? Have you ever thought of them as language learning tools?
Now let's talk about a strategy that takes advantage of the ubiquitous world of social media. Social media micro-learning.
Okay, this one definitely speaks to my generation, but how can scrolling through Instagram actually help me learn English?
Well, it's about being intentional with your social media time, right?
Okay.
So instead of mindlessly scrolling, follow educational accounts dedicated to English learning. They offer bite-sized lessons, vocabulary tips, and grammar explanations in a fun and engaging way.
I've actually come across a few of those accounts. They're really good at breaking down complex grammar concepts into these easily digestible chunks, and I love that they use humor and visuals to make learning more memorable.
Yeah, the article recommends following accounts like at BB Learning English or at English with Lucy. They offer a wealth of free resources, from short video clips to interactive quizzes.
And what's so great about social media is the sense of community.
Yes.
Right? You can connect with other learners, share your progress, ask questions, and even get feedback on your pronunciation.
Exactly. And you don't have to be a passive consumer of content.
Right.
The article encourages you to become a creator as well. Try posting short videos, summarizing your day in English, or sharing your thoughts on a current event.
That's a great way to put your learning into practice and build confidence.
Yeah.
And it's a fun way to document your language journey and connect with other learners all around the world.
Absolutely. And don't forget to use relevant hashtags like #EnglishJourney or #LanguageLearning to kind of expand your reach and join the global language learning community. So listener, have you ever used social media for language learning? What are your favorite accounts or strategies? We're eager to hear your tips and insights.
All right, right before a strategy that might sound a bit wacky at first, it's called memory hacks with weird associations.
Oh, I love this one. This one is all about tapping into the power of your imagination and tricking your brain into remembering new words. It's based on the principle that our brains tend to remember unusual or bizarre things more easily than mundane information.
I can definitely relate to that. I'm way more likely to remember a funny anecdote than a dry textbook definition. But how does this apply to language learning?
So instead of simply memorizing lists of vocabulary, this strategy encourages you to create vivid, even absurd, mental images to associate with new words. It's like creating your own personal mnemonic device.
Okay, give me an example. How would I use this technique to remember the word table?
Okay, well, table kind of rhymes with cable, right? So imagine a giant table suspended in midair by this thick, tangled cable swaying precariously back and forth.
Okay, that's definitely a vivid image, and I have to admit it's pretty hilarious. But how does that actually help me remember the word table?
It's all about creating this strong connection between the word and a memorable image.
Hmm.
And the more unusual or funny the image, the better your brain is more likely to latch onto those quirky associations and retain the information.
I can see how that would work. It's like creating a mental hook to hang those new words on, and the more outlandish the hook, the less likely it is to slip your mind.
Exactly. So, listener, have you ever tried using mnemonics or weird associations to remember new information? We'd love to hear your creative memory hacks.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the next strategy, which is a classic technique for improving pronunciation and fluency shadowing, like a secret agent.
Ooh, this one sounds intriguing. I'm picturing myself in a dimly lit room, headphones on, mimicking a spy's every word.
Well, maybe not quite that dramatic, but you're on the right track. Shadowing is all about mimicking native speakers to refine your pronunciation, intonation, and even accent. It's like becoming a vocal chameleon, adapting your speech patterns to match those of fluent speakers.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does this technique actually work?
So the first step is to choose audio clips from sources like TED Talks podcasts or even movie scenes featuring native English speakers.
Okay.
Pick something that interests you and that features clear, engaging speech.
I love that it's like turning your favorite podcast or movie into a pronunciation practice session. But how do I actually shadow? Do I just listen and repeat?
It's a bit more nuanced than that. Listen to the clip in short segments, pausing every few seconds to repeat exactly what you hear. Mimic not just the words, but also the tone, the speed, and even the subtle inflections.
Because like I'm trying to become a vocal clone of the speaker.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the more your brain will start to pick up on those subtle nuances of pronunciation and intonation.
And I bet this would be especially helpful for people who want to improve their accent or reduce their native language's influence on their English pronunciation.
Absolutely. It's like training your ears and your mouth to produce more natural-sounding English.
I'm definitely going to try this one out. It sounds like a fun and effective way to kind of refine my pronunciation. So, listener, have you ever tried shadowing? What resources did you use? Let us know in the comments.
All right, ready to take your English immersion to the next level without even leaving your home? The next strategy is called Create a Fake English Bubble.
Okay, I'm picturing myself surrounded by giant iridescent bubbles filled with English words. But seriously, what does this strategy entail?
It's about intentionally surrounding yourself with the English language as much as possible, even if you're not physically in an English-speaking country.
So it's like creating my own little English-speaking world. I like it, but how do I actually do that?
Well, the article suggests some simple yet effective techniques.
Okay.
One is to label everything in your house in English. The fridge, the window, the TV remote is everything.
Okay.
It might feel a bit silly at first, but it's a constant visual reminder of the language.
I can see how that would be helpful. It's like turning your home into a giant English vocabulary game, and I bet it would be especially helpful for visual learners who thrive on seeing those words written out.
Another tip is to switch the language settings on your phone, your laptop, your social media accounts to English. This kind of forces you to navigate menus, apps, and websites in English, constantly exposing yourself to new vocabulary and phrases.
That's a great idea, and it's something we can easily do without making any major changes to our routines. It's like sneaking in a little bit of English practice throughout the day. What other creative tips does the article suggest?
Well, think about everyday activities. Try cooking using English recipes. Not only will you expand your culinary vocabulary, but you might also discover some delicious new dishes or listen to the English podcasts while you're commuting or exercising.
Ooh, those are great ideas. It's all about finding ways to integrate English into your daily life in a natural and enjoyable way. It's not about setting aside hours for dedicated study. It's about weaving the language into the fabric of your day.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about creating an environment where you're constantly encountering and interacting with the language. The more you immerse yourself, the more natural and intuitive English will become.
So, listener, have you ever tried creating a fake language bubble at home? What are your tips and tricks? We'd love to hear your creative ideas.
Now let's move on to a strategy for those who love a good challenge and enjoy pushing their limits. The word sprint challenge.
Ooh, I'm feeling a surge of adrenaline already. Tell me more about this challenge.
The concept is simple but effective. You set a timer, usually for about 60 seconds, and try to write or spell as many words as possible from a specific category.
Okay, that seems pretty straightforward. But what kind of categories are we talking about, and what's the goal, just to see how many words I can come up with?
Yeah.
Exactly. You can choose categories like food, animals, verbs, or adjectives. The goal is to beat your previous score each time, pushing yourself to recall words quickly and accurately.
So it's like a mental workout for my vocabulary. I like it, and I can see how this would be a great way to identify gaps in my knowledge. If I struggle to come up with words for a certain category, I know that's an area I need to focus on.
Exactly. And the time pressure creates a sense of urgency, which can actually enhance focus and memory retention. It's like a sprint for your brain.
So listener, are you ready to unleash your inner word wizard and take on the word sprint challenge? Let us know in the comments.
And now for our final strategy, and perhaps the most important one of all, embrace the cringe.
Wait, embracing the cringe, is this some kind of new age self-help technique?
Not exactly. This strategy is all about adopting a mindset of self-compassion and humor throughout your language learning journey. It's about letting go of perfectionism and embracing the inevitable awkwardness that comes with learning a new language. Okay, I think I understand. So instead of beating myself up every time I make a mistake, I should just laugh it off and keep going.
Exactly. Think about it. When a child is learning to walk, do we criticize them for falling?
No.
Of course not. We encourage them to get back up and try again.
That's so true. And the same applies to language learning, those awkward moments, those times when you completely butcher a pronunciation or mix up your grammar. They're not failures, they're opportunities for growth.
What's fascinating here is that by allowing ourselves to make mistakes, we actually create a more conducive learning environment. We become less inhibited, more willing to experiment, and ultimately more likely to achieve fluency.
It's like that saying, you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Well, in this case, you have to make a few linguistic blunders to become a fluent English speaker.
Precisely. And remember, laughter is a fantastic learning tool. When you can laugh at your mistakes, you take away their power.
Right.
They become less intimidating and more like stepping stones on your path to fluency.
So listener, what are some of your most cringe-worthy language learning moments? Share them in the comments. We'd love to hear your stories and celebrate those hilarious blunders together. Welcome back, language explorers. We're picking up right where we left off, digging deeper into these unconventional but surprisingly effective strategies for taking your English to the next level.
It's amazing how these approaches challenge the traditional view of language learning as this, like, rigid, rule-based process, isn't it?
Yeah.
They remind us that it can be a joyful and engaging journey.
Absolutely. And speaking of joy and engagement, we left off on a really intriguing note, embracing the cringe. I have to admit, I was a little skeptical at first. Is it really that important to laugh at our mistakes?
Well, it's more than just laughing at mistakes. It's about kind of shifting our mindset, you know?
Yeah.
Think about it. How often do you find yourself getting frustrated or discouraged when you, like, stumble over pronunciation or forget a grammar rule?
All the time. It's so easy to fall into that trap of feeling like you're just not good at languages.
Yeah, but that's where embracing the cringe comes in. You know, it's about acknowledging that mistakes are an inevitable part of the learning process.
Right.
They're not a sign of failure, but rather proof that you're stretching your limits and pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone.
It's like that old saying, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. But in this case, it's more like you can't become fluent in English without making a few hilarious blunders.
Exactly. And when we can laugh at those blunders, they lose their power to hold us back. They become less intimidating and more like stepping stones on our path to fluency.
So what would you say to someone who's struggling to embrace the cringe? What if they're just too embarrassed to speak English for fear of making mistakes?
I would remind them that everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers. It's part of being human. And in fact, those mistakes are often our greatest teachers. They show us where we need to improve and help us to better understand the nuances of the language.
That's a great point. It's about reframing our perspective and seeing those mistakes as opportunities for growth rather than setbacks.
Precisely. And remember, language learning isn't a race to perfection. It's a journey of discovery.
Yeah.
You know, it's about exploring a new world, connecting with people, and expressing yourself in a whole new way.
And that journey is bound to be filled with twists and turns, and yes, a few cringeworthy moments along the way.
But those moments are often the most memorable and the ones that we learn the most from.
Speaking of memorable moments, let's take a look at what our listeners have to say about these strategies. I'm always amazed by their creativity and insights.
Me too. They're a constant reminder that the best approach to language learning is often a personalized one. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay.
Right.
The important thing is to find what resonates with you and keeps you motivated.
Absolutely. So let's see what our listeners have been experimenting with. First up, we have a comment from Sarah who says, I've been trying out the fake English bubble strategy, and it's been surprisingly effective. I labeled everything in my kitchen in English, and now I'm practically a pro at ordering groceries online.
That's fantastic, Sarah. It's amazing how those small changes can make such a big difference. By constantly surrounding yourself with the language you're creating, an immersive environment that really accelerates your learning.
Next, we have Michael, who writes, I'm a total gamer, so the gamification strategy is right up my alley. I set myself a challenge to learn 10 new phrasal verbs every day, and if I succeed, I get to treat myself to a new level in my favorite video game. It's been a game changer.
I love that, Michael, you found a way to combine your passion for gaming with your language learning goals. And those little rewards can be a powerful motivator. It's about making the process fun and rewarding.
Here's an interesting comment from Maria. She says, I've always been terrified of speaking English, but the voice assistant showdown strategy has helped me overcome my fear. I started by asking Siri simple questions, and now I have full-blown conversations with her about everything from the weather to current events. It's a great way to practice without feeling self-conscious.
That's such a great point, Maria. It's a safe and judgment-free way to build your speaking confidence. And those voice assistants are surprisingly good conversationalists these days. They can even crack a joke or two, which helps to lighten the mood.
All right, we have time for one more comment. This one's from David, who says, I'm a visual learner, so the memory hacks with weird associations strategy has been a revelation. I've created the most bizarre mental images to remember new words, and it's actually working. I even drew some of them, and now I have a whole gallery of weird and wonderful vocabulary art.
That's fantastic. David, you found a way to tap into your learning style and make those new words stick. And, there's a scientific basis for this. Our brains are wired to remember unusual and emotionally charged information. So the more bizarre and humorous those associations are, the better.
It's like creating your own mental museum of English vocabulary filled with these quirky exhibits that you can easily recall.
Exactly. And that brings us to an important point that I want to emphasize. While these strategies are incredibly valuable, the most crucial factor in language learning is consistency.
I couldn't agree more. It's not about finding the perfect method or cramming for hours on end. It's about making English a regular part of your life, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Exactly. Think of it like exercising a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. And the same goes for language. The more you expose yourself to English, the more natural and intuitive it will become.
I've often heard people say that they just don't have time to learn a new language. But with these strategies, it's not about finding these huge chunks of time. It's about integrating those micro moments of learning into your everyday routine.
Absolutely. Whether it's labeling your kitchen in English, listening to a podcast while you commute, or having a quick chat with your voice assistant, those little actions add up over time.
So true. And before we move on, I have a challenge for our listeners.
Oh, I love a good challenge. What is it?
All right, here it is. Choose one of the strategies we've discussed today and commit to implementing it for the next week, just 1 week, and then come back to the comments section and share your experience. What did you learn? What surprised you? What challenges did you face?
I love it. It's a fantastic way to put these strategies into action and see real results. Who knows? You might even discover your new favorite learning technique.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into unique and engaging English learning tricks. It's been an incredible journey exploring these unconventional strategies, and I'm excited to see what other gems we can uncover.
I agree. It's been so inspiring to see our listeners embracing these techniques and making them their own. It really proves that learning a language doesn't have to be a chore. You can be an adventure filled with creativity, laughter, and even a little bit of cringe.
Speaking of cringe, that last strategy we talked about really got me thinking, as learners, we often strive for perfection, but that can actually hold us back. It's like we're so afraid of making mistakes that we end up paralyzed and unable to progress.
Yeah, that's such a crucial point. Embracing the cringe isn't just about laughing off mistakes.
Yeah.
It's about shifting our entire mindset towards learning.
Wow.
It's about recognizing that mistakes are not failures, but rather valuable feedback that helps us grow and improve.
I love that perspective. It's like turning those awkward moments into learning opportunities. And when we can laugh at ourselves and those blunders, they lose their power to intimidate us.
Exactly. It's about cultivating a sense of self-compassion and recognizing that even the most fluent speakers make mistakes from time to time. Nobody's perfect, and that's okay.
So how can we encourage ourselves to embrace the cringe, especially in those moments when we feel embarrassed or discouraged? Do you have any tips for overcoming that fear of making mistakes?
Well, one thing that can help is to just remind yourself that everyone makes mistakes,
Hmm.
even native speakers. It's part of the learning process, and in fact, those mistakes are often our greatest teachers. They highlight the areas where we need to focus our attention and provide valuable insights into the nuances of the language.
That's a great reminder. Instead of viewing mistakes as setbacks, we can see them as signposts pointing us in the right direction. They're like little breadcrumbs leading us towards fluency.
Precisely. And another tip is to find a supportive learning environment where you feel comfortable experimenting with the language without fear of judgment. This could be a language exchange partner, a tutor, or even an online community of learners who are all in the same boat.
I love that idea. Surrounding yourself with a supportive community can make a huge difference in building confidence and overcoming those feelings of self-doubt. It's like having a cheerleading squad cheering you on every step of the way.
Exactly. And remember, language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be ups and downs, moments of frustration and moments of triumph, but the most important thing is to keep going, to keep practicing, and to never give up on your goal.
So true. It's about enjoying the journey and celebrating those small victories along the way. And speaking of celebrating, let's take a moment to acknowledge all the incredible insights our listeners have shared throughout this deep dive.
Yeah, I'm always blown away by their creativity and enthusiasm. It's
Yeah.
been so inspiring to see them taking these unconventional strategies and adapting them to their own unique learning styles.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the power of personalized learning and the importance of finding what truly resonates with you. So before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final challenge.
You ready for it?
Bring it on. I'm always up for a challenge.
All right, here it is. Choose one of the strategies we've discussed today that really sparked your interest and commit to implementing it for an entire month, not just a week, but a whole month. Really dive in and see what happens. Then come back and share your experience with us. What worked, what didn't, what breakthroughs did you have? We can't wait to hear your stories.
I love it. It's like a month-long language learning experiment. Embrace the challenge, be consistent, and have fun with it.
Exactly. And remember, the most important thing is to make English a part of your life, to weave it into your daily routine in a way that feels natural and enjoyable. Whether you're watching movies with dual subtitles, creating a meme bank, or challenging your voice assistant to a debate, those small actions will add up over time and bring you closer to your language goals. And who knows, you might even discover a newfound love for the English language along the way. It's a fascinating and ever-evolving language full of surprises and delights waiting to be discovered.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of unique and engaging English learning tricks. We hope you've been inspired, motivated, and maybe even a little bit entertained.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep practicing, and keep embracing the cringe.
Happy learning, everyone!